So Psalm 23, here we are in the fourth week of Lent, and this familiar psalm is repeated together for Christians at communion. It's read at the bedsides of those who are breathing their last breaths, and again at their memorial service. And Sarah, you told me that it's always read in a Jewish.
The interesting thing for me is that the one constant, other than the Kaddish, the prayer, the mourner's Kaddish that we say, the one constant in a Jewish funeral or service is Psalm 23. But the shocker for me is that it's, at least at the ones I've been to in Chicago, I don't know that this is true all the way around. It's like in the King James. And I'm thinking, this is very odd for like the Jewish tradition, but I think it's because, again, from, you know, it's so embedded in people's consciousness, you know, the 23rd Psalm in the King James version.
I mean, if I asked you to repeat it right now, I bet. I know in it would be the King James version. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me in still waters. He restoreth. He leadeth me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Is that right?
Yes.
I got it. Yeah, it's just written in it's one of those memory bank things that we learned so long ago. So we do share the King James versions, Sarah. So it's read at bedsides, and it's in our memorial services, and we share that as Christians and Jews. It's taught at confirmation, and it's embedded in our memories, and it is poetry. It is 8 simple yet complex verses. That's all it is. 52 words. It is. Isn't it amazing that 52 words, 8 verses poetry would still be, you know, that powerful this many years later. So we're glad you're here, and we have some censoring music that Julie, if you want to tell us anything about our music tonight.
My hope with the music each time is it'll just give you some mental space, and I love it that you just recited that beautiful psalm, which also I grew up with that King James version, and I love that we're going to look at some other things with it. This is a cello setting of a hymn called "Lo, I Am With You." It's I don't think it's in the Presbyterian hymn book, but it's from the Iona community and John Bell, and it is a communion hymn, which the words are very simple, but it just made me think of Psalm 23. I mean, the first verse is, "Lo, I am with you to the end of the world," and it repeats that, "Lo, I am with you," and then "I'm with you in the breaking of bread and the drinking of wine." And the 6th verse is, "Lo, I am with you in the shadow of death," which is a reference to Psalm 23.
So, do you want to read, you're gonna read, are you gonna read from,
The Moffat,
yeah,
even though I just mentioned that I also grew up with King James Version, in adulthood, looking at different translations, I started to enjoy, the James Moffat translations, which was sort of like in the 1920s and 30s, 100 years ago, it was considered a modern translation, so maybe not now. But I love, the poetry, but I think it's different. It's different in beautiful ways. The eternal shepherds me, I lack for nothing. He makes me lie in meadows green. He leads me to refreshing streams. He revives life in me. He guides me by true paths as he himself is true. My road may run through a glen of gloom, but I fear no harm, for thou art beside me. Thy club, thy staff, they give me courage. Thou art my host, spreading a feast for me, while my foes have to look on. Thou hast poured oil upon my head, my cup is brimming over. Yes, and all through my life, goodness and kindness wait on me, the Eternal's guest, within his household evermore.
what did you notice? Is there anything that did kind of jumped out at you as you listened to this translation?
The imagery is just beautiful.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Mhm.
My road may run through a glen of gloom. It's a little interesting little word, isn't it?
Yeah.
That sounds better than the valley of the shadow.
Yeah.
That's kind of hard for kids if they think about
A
it.
glen of gloom.
He was Scottish.
In case we can get that.
Oh. I was just looking at Robert Alter's translation, and though I walk in the vale of death's shadows. Kind of like this, kind of like King James. Anything else that caught your ear?
I thought it was much more lyrical too
Mm-hmm.
than King James.
He leads me to refreshing streams. He revives life in me. Is this? There are so many images in this Psalms, and you might have a favorite. This is like I said, we read it here, don't we? Do we read it here at communion or not?
No, I don't, not
Not consistently?
We have, but we don't do it every time.
Yeah, a lot of churches do have that tradition of reading it at communion, saying it together. It's whether you're reading it for the first time or if it's just written on your memory bank, and it's very familiar, there's much to notice. One of the things to know is that it's probably the only psalm that's read and heard in worship multiple times during the lectionary year. So we get it in a 3-year revised common lectionary cycle. We can hear it during the season of Lent or after Easter and after Pentecost. So it comes up 3 different times. The challenge is, I think, to notice the ancient words and the beautiful poetry and how it can continue to comfort and challenge our lives of faith. And I said 52 words. It's 55 words in Hebrew is what I read, Sarah. Which means at the center of the psalm is the 20, you haven't counted, is the 28th word. Some commentary writer wanted to point this out. You know, every commentator wants to find their unique contribution to
Exactly.
something, particularly something as beloved and memorable as this. So it consists of 55 words in Hebrew, which the center of the psalm is the 28th word, you are with me. So this commentary writer said the psalm is framed by 2 references to God as Lord at the beginning and the end. Now, this is where Sarah and I were, it's so wonderful to have good friends who are biblical scholars, because when I need help with something, I can just turn to them. So we were talking about this, about the commentary I read said the original audience hearing this psalm would have understood shepherd as referencing a king.
Mhm.
You agree?
So, yeah, so I mean, so there, if you think about it, well, first of all, I think that they hear shepherd and of course they hear God, right? I mean, because it's talking about God. And the ultimate good shepherd, if you will, is God. And yet, if you think about Ezekiel, like the book of Ezekiel, chapter 34, it's all about the bad shepherds who led Israel astray. And there's some imagery in there, if you go back, just chapter 3, 4 in Ezekiel, you'll see there's some imagery that relates to really God as shepherd, because God starts talking about my sheep, Israel. But God also talks about, since you bad shepherds have done such a bad job, you know, you're no longer going to deal with my sheep, and I'm going to give you a shepherd who's going to be a good shepherd, doesn't use the word good, David, King David. So again, kings are also very much associated with shepherding. But the other thing, as a New Testament scholar, can I say just a teeny bit more? The other thing that I find fascinating is, I think, in churches, right? The notion from the Gospel of John, chapter 10, you have the notion of Jesus as the shepherd and the good shepherd. You have the imagery of the shepherd and the sheep, and then Jesus as the good shepherd. But I sort of wonder where that good shepherd comes from, and I think in a way, it comes from the imagery that we have in the Psalm, and we have in some other places in the Hebrew Bible, of God as the ultimate good shepherd. And now it's about Jesus being the good shepherd.
Is it the John 10 passage where it also speaks of other flocks?
Yes, that very mysterious one-liner that we wish to say more, tell us who those other flocks are,
Absolutely.
are coming from. But yeah, but in the Gospel of John, a lot of things that are spoken about elsewhere about God now become about Jesus. And so I think that the symmetry of God is good shepherd, Jesus is good shepherd, I think that's probably a big echo, even though it may also be about kingship.
Yeah. Well, I mean, notice the imagery in these first 3 verses of the Psalm, 23rd Psalm. So the first verses 1 through 3 picture God's shepherding role, tending, leading, and feeding, which if you think about then the role of Jesus as the good shepherd, what does he do? He tends, he leads, he feeds, literally, and what? metaphorically, yeah, metaphorically. In his translation of this verse, Robert Alter notes that the Hebrew word, nefesh,
Nefesh,
nefesh.
Yeah.
So aside, when I finished my graduate program and then my college changed, I wanted to be ordained. I had Greek, no problem, I had Greek, I'd done Greek, but I didn't have Hebrew, so Sarah graciously wanted to try out a new book, and so she taught me Hebrew, and I come over to her house, and I could hear her son laughing in the background, or imagined it, or when I go over to practice, because my pronunciation of Hebrew with the southern accent is more than they could take, but she put up with me. Nefesh. The Hebrew word nefesh does not mean soul, but life or life breath. So Alter translates verse 3, my life he brings back. What did, my life he brings back. And here, verse 3 is, he leads me to refreshing streams. He revives life in me. The image of someone who has almost stopped breathing and is revived, brought back to life. Life breath. No wonder we hear this psalm so much at times when life breath is ending. I was thinking about this and how it's read maybe at a bedside. Life breath is ending, and then the connection with the loved ones who are there and the family, when your own life breath, and how will your life breath continue without the life breath of that one that you love? And there's that moment, I think, if you've been attending when at the death of someone you love, and you see visibly that life, that last breath, and then you catch your own, and you think, you wonder, what's next? How does my life breath go on? And I think I love that, his work with that. The psalm affirms God's sustaining and shepherding presence. Pay attention to verse 4, which adds another dimension when the psalmist writes about walking through the darkest valley. And what is it? The gloom, Glen of gloom. I think I've just got a new favorite translation.
Right, he guides me by true paths as he himself is true. My road may run through a glen of gloom, but I fear no harm.
A glen of gloom.
That's right.
A glen of gloom. Let's see what Pamela Greenberg does with this. I've been waiting to hear her. I sent her a copy of my book, and I've been hoping I might hear from her. I've always wanted to be in touch with her, but she hasn't been in touch. Glen of gloom. When I walk through the valley, overshadowed by death, is her translation. When the psalmist writes about walking through the darkest valley or the glen of gloom, the Hebrew word, okay, Sarah, it's just, I wrote this, of course, not knowing she would be here tonight, but
So
total
just-
darkness, Hebrew word, TSALMAVETH. Total darkness, the Hebrew word,
if I could see it in Hebrew. I'd probably be-
oh, well,
but
I don't have it.
Transliteration is
Yeah,
like
yeah.
not gonna be,
Yeah, I don't have it in Hebrew, but, sorry.
it's somewhere in here, darkest valley,
Yeah,
Hebrew word. Mafed,
yeah. Anyway, total darkness
Mafed means death, the second part of it means death.
means death. The songwriter confesses that
Yeah.
even, so it does mean death.
Probably does mean something like valley of death.
He confesses that even when the path that is followed is not a desirable one, God is present. And then verse 5 goes on to imagine God offering hospitality at a table. And that was the image I pulled out of this psalm that I wanted us to play with around table. And then the psalm concludes with a simple faith statement of one who's assured of being in God's presence. I guess that's verse 6, then surely goodness and mercy shall follow me. One commentary writer, was suggesting that, it's not, rather than us seeking God's goodness and mercy. Here the psalmist reverses it, God's goodness and mercy finds us. Which is really a comforting, wonderful thought. We're gonna, is it close to you leaving too?
I've already talked to John, I'm gonna be a little bit later.
Okay. Well, we were gonna compare some translations of one verse and then we were gonna do some more music, so. I'll just keep up then if you can stay, because I thought you might like. Yes. All right, so on the handout for today has there's a table. So I pulled out, verse 5. Let's take some turns reading. Carol, can you read, Robert Alter?
So, in the sanctum, I beheld you.
Wait, where are you? Oh, I'm sorry, he's got the wrong one. That's next week.
Here, there's one right there in front of you to the right.
Oh, I have 2 weeks, okay.
Did anybody else have that one?
Twice now.
You sat at a table.
Oh, you're the only one, you're special. That's next week.
Okay, hands.
Or was that last week?
That was last week.
That was last week.
Okay,
Just got in the sack.
Hands look familiar.
Yeah, all right,
Excuse me.
read Robert Alter.
Okay. You set out a table before me in the face of my foes. You moisten my head with oil, my cup overflows.
And Candy, can you read Pamela Greenberg?
You spread a table before me in face of my greatest fears.
Janet?
You set a table for me right in front of my enemies. You bathed my head in oil. My cup is so full, it spills over.
And Linda?
You served me a 6-course dinner right in front of my enemies. You revived my drooping head. My cup brims with blessing.
So, 3 translations and 1 paraphrase. And so we've heard it read in, King James, or spoken in King James, read, and, Moffat.
Yeah.
And now we've got 3 more translations and a paraphrase. Anything that jumps out at you about, any of these that brings some interesting new thoughts to you about this verse? Sarah? Anything?
I just think it's sort of interesting that most of them picture, you're sitting in front of your foes or your enemies. But Pamela Greenberg phrases it, in face of my greatest fears, which makes it very vivid, but maybe in a different way. So, yeah.
I'm just intrigued by Eugene Peterson coming up with a 6-course dinner.
One of my sixes, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
He's gonna be the server.
Yeah. Probably your head's drooping because you've had too much food, right? Too much beverage, So, Janet?
I was just thinking about the hymn and our hymnal, in our Psalter. That is the King of Love, my shepherd is. I had never thought about that. And then, the very last line, that hymn, I always loved it. And I can't say the whole line, but it's like a child at home.
Oh,
It's that, to me.
Oh, my
that's just-
gosh.
I love that one too. Yeah.
And I have those little words, because that's what I'm gonna play. Oh, if you look at the beginning of the child.
my shepherd will supply my need. That's what she's gonna play.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Next, the sure provisions of my God attend me all my days.
Mhm.
And may your house be my abode, and all my work be praised. There would I find a settled rest while others go and come. No more a stranger or a guest, but
Like a child.
like a child. I can't get through that one, when it comes that one. One of my favorites. Anything else, speaks to you and what you've heard or? I'm like you, Sarah, when I was reading Pamela Greenberg, it totally reframes it, because, I talk about in the book, which I'm not gonna talk a lot about here, you can read it for yourself, about, I do, when I come to the table, or take communion, who are my enemies, who are the people I really disagree with, and, I talk with them, and so there is that aspect of it, facing our enemies, and honestly, recognizing that, but she just totally reframes it. You spread a table for me in the face of my greatest fear. So the enemy is not what's out there, but who it is out there, but what's inside of me. My great fears.
Almost as if, what that says is that we project onto our fear, makes sometimes someone or something an enemy.
Yeah, yeah. Anything else you notice? Oh, yeah.
The last one, one by Paul Simon, the 7 Psalms,
Oh, you're looking at the other handout, yeah,
am
yeah.
I going too fast?
No, it's okay.
Okay, I just like the sentence in there, the Lord is a meal for the poorest of the poor. It's not really referring to monetary poor, but those that are poor in spirit
Mhm,
and lacking in
mhm.
all the things that the poorest of the poor could be somebody mourning or, needing God.
Sure.
And I think that it's not, I don't think it's really a meal
Mhm.
in the terms that we think of a meal.
Yeah, it could
But
be,
I think it's a fulfilling or filling us with the Spirit of the Lord.
much broader.
Yeah, I see it that way. I mean,
Mhm.
years ago, my lovely Baptist grandmother explained it that way. And she only had the King James, of course, but when I got to that part, a little kid by the name of Candy, me,
Mhm.
said, well, what do they eat? And she said, honey, they're not really eating, they're being fed by the Lord in scripture and prayer, and, she went through, and then she named all the things in the Beatitudes, blessed are the poor in spirit, and all that, and she said, that's what God means by us eating, it's not just a meal like you think of a meal around a table.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
that's my-
thank you for, I forgot I'm putting this out, but I'm sorry, it didn't get copied in columns, I had it all spaced in columns, so, but you can figure it out, but the one that Kenny's referencing to is a new, CD by Paul Simon, and which if you like, it's kind of like all the songs are in my head, I can't delete them because that was the 70s, and, but it's a new CD, and it's called 7 Psalms, and, you can either get it as a CD or you can do it as an MP3, download on your phone, and, the Lord is my engineer, the Lord is the earth I ride on, the Lord is the face and the atmosphere, the path I slip and slide on. I mean, do you think he thought back to slip sliding away?
Oh, yeah. For sure.
I mean, the whole album is just delightful. I mean, he's just going to another whole nother place. And I've read some reviews of it, this thing at this end of it. What is he, 82, and just still so vibrant, like a lot of us friends who are in their 80s. What is this saying? The Lord is a virgin forest. The Lord is a forest ranger. The Lord is a meal for the poorest of the poor. And however poor isn't understood, as Candy was pointing out, a welcome door to the stranger. I'll let you.
Yeah, I was gonna play, I've got a cello setting of that hymn you were referencing, My Shepherd Will Supply My Need. And last week we were talking about how, so often, text from the Psalms is used in many of our hymns in our hymn books, but it's a little bit, different. And so, I'm just gonna read you the very beginning, so as you hear, maybe you'll think of those words as you hear me play this hymn. My shepherd will supply my need. Jehovah is his name. In pastures fresh, he makes me feed beside the living stream. He brings my wandering spirit back when I forsake his ways and leads me for his mercy's sake in paths of truth and grace. And you read the third verse. I'm not going to read them all of it.
What we have is, the allegations are that Trump and his team really tried to get not a certain of this change, or the US Constitution, or the Constitution. The Constitution point to the provisions of the Constitution. I know the US Constitution and the Florida Constitution are different. Georgia goes in much more protecting the individual rights of voters. We didn't have an express right to vote in our Constitution. So I think that the AG needs to take it back, take it back to a grand jury. We submitted, it really is a more pleading issue rather than a proof issue. And he's.
Oh. Somebody, who's not muted. Right.
They can do more with this case. I think there's a few more.
Yeah, in that, so, from the Psalter hymns that we do, I can remember being in a small country church in DeKalb, Tennessee. The hymnals did not have the music, but that was in the hymn, and I remember them singing it. Just like that, because when we started singing it again here, all those memories of that hit me. And my grandmother played the dulcimer, and she would play along if she was able, not always was she, but anyway, I remember them telling me Family's traditions of hymns. I still have two of the hymnals, by the way. A lot of songs.
We get an adjudication. There would be something to turn that off.
Would it be on her computer?
But, you know, that is such a beautiful memory, and that kind of leads us into what Liv and I were thinking about discussing next is, you know, your own personal memories and connections with this psalm, and in this case, with the hymn that's made out of the psalm. And I was telling Liv when we were talking about this psalm that I have a very vivid memory. Well, I was about 8 years old and my whole family had gone over to Scotland to live for the year. And my parents wanted us to go ahead and be in a class with children of our same age. And so it was all a little advanced for me, and my mother was really helping me. And so the first week I came back and I said, Mom, we're supposed to memorize the 23rd Psalm. Now, this was Scotland in the 50s, you know, this would not happen. Right. But, you know, I was just terrified. And anyway, she helped me through it. And then when she died at the age of 100, I did read the 23rd Psalm at her funeral. But I was thinking about all of that one day, and I wrote a little poem, which is another kind of paraphrase. I think about how Paul Simon was inspired, and you know, I was inspired, and I called this the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd. Shall I just talk really loud?
No, do you think I should just exit out of this and just say we're?
But there's no way for you to mute them.
To tell them that they.
Or tell them,
Tell them they're to mute themselves.
Not muted, it's just Jackie and Dana, right? Are y'all muted? Are you muted? Okay, they're muted, it's just two.
Is that where it's coming from? I don't know.
It seems to be.
All that tech stuff, go beyond me.
There goes in here.
Okay.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Ancient wisdom resonating through my decades and the days and centuries of so many. He makes me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside still waters, even as a frightened 8-year-old assigned to memorize these words. Corporal punishment promised at failure. He restores my soul as my mother sits patiently with me, assuring me and repeating with me these timeless words again and again, trusting that my young brain will remember. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake, even though I stubbornly denied him rebellious adolescence, needing to discover for myself why so much was forbidden. Yes, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, too close myself as I lose my friends and family to suicide, cancer, car crashes, old age, pneumonia, heart attacks, all the wages of life bearing down. I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, and thy rod and staff comfort me. Though it took many years to learn to trust and truly pray, to lean on the love and strength always there, though banishing fear always a struggle. You prepare a table before me, even in the presence of my enemies. And yes, we do have enemies. You command that we love them too. That means listening to them and acting in ways that show love and benefits them, though that is so very hard. You anoint my head with oil and love. My cup is so full that it spills over the rim, and I learn to be humble and grateful and open my eyes to you with the innocence of a child. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life as I learn ever more each day to dwell with you. in your home, with you in my heart, with love for others, without fear, as I learned that day when I stood in front of the class and I spoke the 23rd Psalm. And this is just sort of an intro to open it up that others share memories maybe about how this psalm has accompanied you in your life. I brought up a memory this evening.
I remember, when I was I was waiting for, the result of the PET scan. And so I think I knew at that point that I had breast cancer, but the PET scan would show if it was in the other place. And the only thing that I could do to distract myself waiting for that test result was to walk. I walked and walked and walked. And for some reason, over and over again, it was, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Over and over and over.
So you just use that kind of
Yeah,
like your breath prayer.
Yeah.
Just kept saying it.
Because, yeah.
Yeah, because you were walking the glen of Glen.
Yeah,
In
but
the
it's hard
shadow,
to
in the
know.
shadow of the valley of death, which, who knew what you were facing? Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyone else experiences with this psalm?
And so many of our services here are funeral services, memorial services, graveside services. This psalm is recited together, in that. And I remember, when I was doing nursing home counseling a long time ago, one of the men who was nearing the end of his life, he had been in recovery from addiction for 35 years, and he really couldn't, remember much about anything except how much that recovery community had meant to him and the 23rd Psalm. So when I went to sit with him, that's really all we did was I held his hand and we said the 23rd Psalm together, and I'll remember that always. And tears flowing down his cheeks.
Yeah.
When I was reading your chapter this afternoon, I always have this little imaginary tape player playing mostly hymns in my head. And, I started thinking about when peace like a river attendeth my soul, it is well with my soul. I really thought a lot about that.
Yeah.
I had to go look it up on Mr. Google and sit down in my.
And sorrows like deep rivers, whatever as well with my soul.
The 23rd Psalm, while it really has no direct connection with this hymn, in ways it reminds me, I don't know that any of you all, unless you grew up Baptist like I did, or used the Broadman hymn, do you know it? It's whispering hope. Soft as you probably know it from Woodmont, but soft as the voice of an angel. And the verse is sung by solo. I don't have it with me, but the last part is whispering hope, how welcome your voice to me. And it's just, it's like peace, like a river, but it ties to this because it connects to that last part. And it's the hope that we have through the Lord and how much it ties to all that we have. And all years ago, my cousins and I sang together. We sang at church services all over DeKalb and Warren counties. We sang at the funerals. We sang at the reunions. I mean, they just called us the girls. Don't ask. I was one of the youngest of them for years until younger kids started joining. But if we were lucky enough to have a church piano, a place with a piano, albeit not always in tune, I was a pianist and sang too, but the hymn, the things that they wanted were those older hymns that you just don't hear. I mean, the last time we sang, this lady in the back of the church was like, well, I hope the girls are gonna sing some of those old hymns instead of this new stuff we're getting. But as you learn to sing those hymns, you learn to connect with the Psalms and the scriptures so closely. And I remember following, the 23rd Psalm with the King of Love, my shepherd is. And one of my cousins says, I hope somebody knows this. I said, well, I do. So anyway, here we are muddling through it, but we got through it. No, but of course, when you're in this situation, the amount of people that are, professionally musically trained are far and few between, and they just like to hear us sing. So, but anyway, I can just still hear us. And then the last hymn we did was Whispering Hope. And I can still hear my cousin singing the first verse. She has a beautiful soprano voice. And we joined in on the chorus, but it just really would thrill your soul. But the thing that I want to emphasize is how much people draw from those hymns. I mean, we would go into places that we probably didn't even know anybody. They heard about us, y'all come sing or go sing or something. Please. But anyway, I can laugh about it.
Yeah.
And the minute we walk out of that church, we'd all get in the car and start cracking up, but anyway.
Well, music has this way of speaking so much in ways that, either, with a hymn, like you've got these favorite hymns, Whispering Hope and then King of Love, my shepherd is, but these hymns take, some of the themes in these psalms and speak to us, both the words, like, where you, Janet, where you started, just like a child at home, that just kind of always speaks to me, but then the music just speaks so deeply too. And so in your own experience of singing with with your cousin.
With the girls.
With the girls, that bonded you in a way. We've got another piece that,
Yeah, and this
I'm
is
gonna let
a,
you do the transition.
and this is a perfect setup, because this is an old timey hymn, but, it just made me think about the message of the 23rd Psalm. So if you want to just close your eyes and listen to a very short bit of blessed assurance.
Oh, I love that. Oh, yes.
Love the richness of that cello. Janet, you've got to leave probably, but I don't know, which, it might have been the Isaac Watts piece, but the depth, the deep tones of that cello, you kind of connect with the depths of the Glen of Gloom. And don't you think in the song?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. A couple of questions and then, Julie has one more piece to play, as we leave tonight. We've heard how, it's on the back side of your handout, how, Paul Simon, the Lord is my engineer, the earth I ride on, the face in the atmosphere, the path I slip and slide on. I just love that. So the Lord is my shepherd. How would you complete the sentence? The Lord is my, or, is there an experience that you've had at table that helps you connect with this psalm? Or a third question, when has God's mercy found you? Anybody have any,
Most every day.
God's mercy has found you most every day.
Yeah.
And you want to say one more word about that, Carson?
I'm just always grateful.
Always grateful. And each day for you is different because you have so many ways you're involved, whether it's Habitat with Hugh on Wednesdays or carving in your basement and making wood bowls or teaching. God's mercy abounds. I started the book and Carol with a story about my grandmother's table. So, Sarah, I had my grandmother's furniture when I lived in Chicago, that when she, in her 90s, my mother decided she had to leave her house and she said, well, can I take my marble mantle with me? And my mother said, no, you can't take your marble mantle. I thought she was gonna be disowned at that point. And, she decided to, she was moving to her own apartment. She lived to be 102. Let's just say this was, she had 10 more years, of playing cards and going to casinos in Mississippi on the bus. And, she just had a wonderful life. But she sent me her, dining room furniture, which was massive. I mean, there were eight chairs, 2 tables, right? That sideboard.
Right.
Sarah remembers she had many meals there.
Right.
And a sideboard piece, it was gorgeous. And the tables, I think I described it in the book, there were 2 tables like this, very old, and they folded. And so you unfolded them and swiveled them, and then you put them long, you could get like, about 14, I think.
Right.
14 to
They're
15.
like drop leaf tables.
Yeah, they were drop leaf tables, and then they
Right.
swiveled and opened out. And, I just loved, feeding people at my table and, yeah, we had many meals together. And then I shared many meals with Sarah at her family. So it's poignant that she's here tonight. My favorite meal at her table was always, Hanukkah and we're making latkes tonight yeah. And you eat them when they're hot, so you don't wait. They're coming out hot. They'll have the sauce. Latkes, potato pancakes.
Oh, yeah.
Traditional and Jewish,
Yeah.
Hanukkah, and so applesauce and sour cream and away you go. Tables, and then when, my sister, and I decided to trade tables because I was moving here, I needed smaller space, so she had our great aunt's table and we switched, and she got my grandmother's, so she's got that now, and it's moved to Michigan, and I've got the great aunt's table, which is smaller, which some of you have eaten at, and it has leaves in it, and just tables for me, at the heart of this psalm of connection with tables, of where friends agree, where mercy happens, where grace abounds. So think about, this beloved psalm and have some new insights about it, as we listen. But one more thing, think about, because I'm gonna let Julie, play us out, as they say. Play some music. I'll do a benediction lesson for you. Think about, in this fourth week of Lent, as you pause with this psalm of trust, think about the tables that are set before you. There's a hymn that we used to sing in worship at McCormick, that come to the table of grace. This is God's table, it's not yours or mine, come to the table of grace. And it was come to the table of love, come to the table of joy, come to the table of peace. This is God's table, it's not yours or mine. So maybe it's a table you set in your own home or a table to which you're invited. So recall the tables from your childhood, with Julie's lovely rendition, rewriting of the song to connect with that 8-year-old self that was so afraid of being in a new place and having to do something that, was rather fearful. I think it's a great example of how you can take this psalm and then make it work for your own story. So I encourage you this week, maybe as you sit with this psalm, to think about how it relates to your life story and tables where you've been. This psalm concludes with the affirmation that God's goodness and mercy will always be present as a place that's found in God's house. What kind of table might you find in God's house, in God's dwelling? So Julie, you will,
This last piece I'm going to play you is the beautiful melody from Dvorak's New World Symphony called Going Home, which was a folk melody that he had incorporated into the symphony. And I don't know, it just made me think of
did you
what
use,
we were talking about with the song.
did you use the symphony, did you play that with the symphony?
Many
times. As you go out into this evening, may God's mercy abound in your life. May you share God's love with those that you meet this week. Go in peace. Amen. And we thank Julie for
Oh,
2
yeah.
weeks with us.
When that was, Carol, he was here.
We had a Saturday thing and there were, his hymns and whatnot and,
I think it's been twice.
Good night. Thank you for being here.
yeah.
For some reason, I
Something,
think.
we'll have to ask God when God, that was fine. Yeah,